So now that we're halfway through this month, I'm gonna admit some truths to you guys. I did play several ROM hacks and fan games for this month, but I didn't make full-length video reviews for all of them. And there's several reasons for that, the main one being time. Seriously, I started working on this series at the beginning of November, and I still ran late. Fire Emblem games are huge time sinks, even fan-made ones. I learn that every year that I do this and keep pushing back my start date to try and fix it, so there you go. And the other main reason is that there were several hacks that I played which I felt didn't really warrant a full review due to not having a whole lot to talk about with them, but wanted to cover a little anyway. So that's what we're doing in this video today. These are 5 Fire Emblem ROM hacks I played for this month that didn't get a full video, in no particular order or ranking. So, have you ever wanted to play through Lynn's story in Blazing Sword, but you wished Lynn was a mage instead of a sword lord? Did you ever want all of your characters to just be palette-swapped versions of each other, but still keeping their original personalities and tact no matter how weird or inappropriate it was? Did you ever want to give someone insane endgame weapons in Chapter 1, and then have the end turn button removed? Wait, what? Why is that gone? Is it because they don't give it to you right away in FE7? They forgot to put it back in? What the fuck? Well, throw all that together with tons of random humor and swearing, and you've got yourself the Ostian Princess. The Ostian Princess is a very well-known and infamous hack of Blazing Sword made by a user named MiG64. The best way to describe this game is if you gave someone Photoshop for the first time, all of the sprites from Blazing Sword to work with, and then had them use 4chan as a writing reference. The game is just a beat-for-beat remake of Lynn's mode from Blazing Sword, the story playing out mostly in the same way. You're a tactician that wakes up on the plains of Sakai to meet an ambiguously legally aged girl taking care of you. The game goes through Lynn's story following Lillian, who is the daughter of Lilina of Ostia, and needs to go on a journey to meet her grandfather, Hector, before he dies from poisoning by his brother, Uther. Along the way, she meets a cast of colorful characters that seem to change in appearance at every single splash image, and all who will help this potty-mouthed princess meet her destiny. To be honest, there's not much more to say about the Ostian Princess. I know that a lot of people were probably looking forward to me taking it apart, but I pretty much got everything I needed to know out of it early on. The game's enjoyment pretty much runs on seeing what characters and palette swaps that the creator used in place of Blazing Sword's characters. Like how the smooth-talking Casanova Knight Sane is now played by a character named Axel, who's just a palette swap of the child bard Niels from Blazing Sword. Sprinkle in some lol random, like the boss of one chapter being literal spyware, and some internet edgelord humor, and you've got yourself the Ostian Princess. The game was also buggy as all hell, which may have been something on my end, but I can't say for sure. The game crashed on me at Chapter 4 constantly. It would sometimes crash if I tried to follow Blazing Sword's tutorial script. So, there you go. I'm not bothering any further with it. Have you ever wondered what it would look like if you got a bunch of fan hackers together and had them create a full-fledged 30-chapter game over the span of a week? Well, look no further and feast your eyes on this Technicolor beauty. Void's Blitzarre Adventure is a community collaboration project from the Fire Emblem Universe online community. Basically, the fan hack community decided to try and make a full-length, playable fan game using the Sacred Stones engine, all over the course of a single week. And guess what? The crazy bastards actually did it. The groundbreaking plot of the game is as follows. A pink-haired princess named Void had her family killed by the Demon King, and now she wants revenge. And that's it. As a result of the short development deadline, the game moves at a breakneck speed, with Void and her posse going from chapter to chapter, finding contrived excuse after contrived excuse to keep up with their journey as they make their way to avenge Void's parents and take her kingdom back. The princess is joined by unlikely allies like her brother, Leroy, a faceless soldier named Jerome, and a motor-mouthed mage complaining about those hacker kids today who don't appreciate the hard work and efforts that their hacker elders had to endure. It's cool how each chapter has different gimmicks or unique objectives that need to be completed in a particular way, like how you need to pick up a child character and take him to a village in order to reach the end of the map, because the village is in your way and he needs to destroy it. Gee whiz, get that kid to Xavier's School for the Gifted. Or how on the same map you can recruit Anna, a Myrmidon, into your army, but you have to steal a treasure out from under the nose of an unstoppable undead dragon to convince her to join up. These were neat things, and it was cool to basically see how creators built their maps around one or two mechanics, because that's probably all they had time for. There's not a whole lot that I feel comfortable about critiquing this game, because while it definitely needs polish in a lot of areas, it relies very heavily on self-aware and random humor, kind of like the Ostian Princess in a way, but the fact that it was made in a week by multiple people is the game's merit. It's the reason that people should be interested, and the reason that people should play it. The fact that the community could churn out a working, playable, full-fledged hack in a week is pretty impressive, even if the overall quality isn't at the same level as other full-game hacks are. But, again, the game doesn't pretend that it's trying to be. In fact, they sum it all up perfectly in a single sentence. So this is a game that probably needs to get a full-fledged review at some point, but unfortunately isn't getting one this year due to time restraints. Sorry. Bloodlines is a Fire Emblem fan hack of Blazing Sword by a user named Gast, who also makes a ton of Fire Emblem related character analysis and Let's Play videos on his YouTube channel, as I found out. Oh, look at that, that's pretty good stuff, you should watch it. The game takes place in a fictional world made up of humans and beastmen, and follows the tale of a vigilante named Bram, who actually has a mysterious and regal past that he's running away from. Or something. Bram watches over a small village and occasionally kills bandits for them, but after deciding that the town needs more protection, he sets out to petition the local lord of the land to dispatch more troops to protect the town from the bandits. Along the way, he'll be joined by several interesting characters, like a birdman archer, a scholarly mage, and a dog, who is actually a fully functioning and unique unit, and who is 100% going to die a plotline death. You cannot fool me, game. Bloodlines is interesting because while it uses Fire Emblem as a basis for its creation, it still feels different in a lot of ways. The way the story is presented and advances at the beginning actually makes it feel more like a typical JRPG, where the main character starts on their own doing something relatively minor, and they slowly accumulate more allies as they go along, and the plot develops into a major conflict, and then they have to kill God. There's a lot of interesting elements in this hack, like how the Beastmen characters have their own unique strengths and weaknesses, and how the movement on the map is a result of what race they are. In the second chapter, for example, there's a stretch of water that's difficult for characters to traverse through, but then towards the end of the map, some mer dudes show up to crash your party, and they can swim through it just fine to flank and skewer you. Or how there are bird people that are archers, which means that they can fly around and bypass terrain for better vantage points, but as flying units, they're also weak to the very thing that they use in battle. It's something that was shown to us in the main series with Kenshi Knights and Fates, but it's cool to see it crop up in a fan hack here where the game it's based on didn't have it originally. Furthermore, there was the existence of neutral enemies that would attack anyone and everything on the map when they showed up. Usually in Fire Emblem, you've got your player units, which are blue, enemy units, which are red, and then allied units, which are green. We could only attack enemy units and had to either protect or recruit allied units. But in Bloodlines, the neutral units will go after whoever they want. It actually plays into the strategy too, like how in an early chapter you're surrounded by enemies of both types, so a smart strategy is to let them kill each other while you pick off the stragglers and get to safety. I also like how the story of Bloodlines is presented. Unlike some other hacks, this game doesn't just dump a ton of exposition on you at the beginning of the story. It introduces individual elements and characters to get you familiar with the setting before they finally give you some exposition on the world and its conflicts. There's a way of getting me invested before telling me that, hey, this is why you should be invested. None of that is to say the game doesn't have problems or still needs some improvements. There's definitely some balance issues in the early chapters that need to be sorted out. The dog, Dewey, for example, is horribly weak and is always the first to die, which results in a game over since he's an important character. I mean, I guess it makes sense, considering he is a puppy fighting people with swords and axes. But do we have to go for realism on this one aspect when our best friend is a talking crow with a bow? I also think that right now it relies a bit too heavily on trial and error gameplay and reloading save states until you win at some points. I know that fan hacks kind of just assume that everyone uses save states, but it's nice when you can play a hack like a more authentic video game where you can easily decide not to use save states and just play all the way through like you normally would. Regardless, I want to play more of this hack. I'm not all the way through the current build right now, which is why I can't give it a more thorough review, but maybe I will someday. It's looking promising so far. So, a recurring trend that you've probably noticed with several of the hacks I've covered this month is that a lot of them use one of the GBA games as a base and create their own story with it. Creators craft their own sprites, write their own lore, and come up with their own tale to weave, but they do it all set to the style of Blazing Sword and Sacred Stones. This last hack is no different in that regard, and yet it still chooses to attach itself to a universe within Fire Emblem. Midnight Sun is a ROM hack of Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones created by a user named Alfred Kmont. Rather than using the game's engine as a base though, it also uses the game's setting, or at least a version of it. Midnight Sun takes place in an alternate universe of Sacred Stones, where the War of the Sacred Stones resulted only in one stone surviving. Thus, it was used to seal away the Demon King. However, as this proved to be ineffective, a bunch of scholars who read too much Naruto decided a better method would be able to seal the Demon King into a human host. Our story follows the Demon King's latest vassal, the Princess Faratras. And I'm just going to refer to her as Fa for the rest of this segment because I can't look at her full name without occasionally misreading it as Fart Ass. Fa is the princess of a kingdom called Hoikade and is beloved by all for seeing her as a savior that keeps the Demon King in check. All of that changes when some of her soldiers get brainwashed and try to murder her, and after killing them in self-defense, everybody turns on her, forcing Fa to flee for her life alongside a mysterious hooded knight. From there, we follow her struggle as she tries to figure out how to clear her name, catch the mastermind behind all this, and keep the Demon King sealed away so he can't destroy the world. Midnight Sun is an interesting fan game to talk about because while it was recommended to me by several people, it's coming after playing several other fan games that all stood out a little bit more, at least at first glance. Staff of Ages used a bunch of elements from newer games, Bloodlines straight up put in its own types of units like a dog, and Void's Blitzarre Adventure was a cram project. So when I finally got to Midnight Sun, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I was really curious to see what made this fan game different from the others, and I'm pleasantly surprised at how it turned out. Out of all the ROM hacks I played this month, Midnight Sun is the most standout at playing with its gimmicks and mechanics. Games like The Last Promise and Staff of Ages were more traditionally like Fire Emblem, where you just need to overcome the enemy, maybe pick up a few optional items, and then do something like kill a boss or hold out for 12 turns. Midnight Sun does this too, but it's also constantly introducing new map-based gimmicks to try and keep it interesting. There's a layer of choice present in Midnight Sun that wasn't in the other ROM hacks too. If I had to think of a main Fire Emblem game it reminded me of, it'd be of Fate's Conquest with its varied maps and mechanics. I briefly talked about how Void's Blitzarre Adventure did this too, but Midnight Sun takes it to the nth degree. Take for example one map where Fa is having a hard time containing the Demon King and he spawns in a diamond formation of overpowered centaurs and you have to find your way around them in a certain number of turns to take down their weakened leader and reach Fa who currently can't move. The longer you take means more monsters will spawn in around you, so you gotta gauge how much XP farming you want to do and how quickly you can safely reach her before time runs out. There's also how you choose to resolve a map and how it can affect the story outcome later, like in one map where you're defending against an onslaught of soldiers and you either hang back and let them run out, or go kill the boss which will whack them from the story and make the other boss show up. And to that end, a lot of times Midnight Sun felt like I was playing a puzzle game, not just a turn-based war simulator. It's true that it doesn't always work out. My least favorite chapter by far was a stealth chapter, and 9 times out of 10 when a non-stealth game tries to have a stealth level, it falls on its face, which Midnight Sun unfortunately does. Still, it's cool to see that the creator was playing around with different ways to keep each stage interesting with their own variety. On the gameplay side of things, Midnight Sun wasn't too hard and felt fair. On the story side, I got pretty attached to Fa and her motley crew, eager to see where they would go next and wanting to try and get Fa a happy ending because I felt she deserved it after all the crap she had to go through. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen because development on this hack was ceased back in 2017. It's disappointing, but also an all too common occurrence. A fan hack ceases production due to lack of interest or the creator just having to deal with real life issues and doesn't have time for it anymore. I was interested in seeing where Midnight Sun went, but at the same time I do understand and I feel like this is the most important reason that Midnight Sun needs to be on this list. I've only recently started playing games from the fan hack community, but fan hacking and creating fan games seems like a terribly thankless job. You spend weeks, months, years working on something for a bunch of random strangers online who may or may not even like it, and may or may not make a whole bunch of videos in a month talking about them. It might be something you love, true, but at the end of the day, you're not getting any kind of compensation for it. Maybe you got a Patreon and get donations to help, but fan hacks can't be sold. In fact, Nintendo has a pretty harsh reaction to fan games about their series sometimes, as seen with fan games like Pokemon Uranium and AM2R. So you could work for years on something and have it snatched away in an instant. I'm not going back to what I said at the beginning of the month about criticism. Everything is susceptible to it, no matter how much time and work is put in. But I've definitely gotten a new appreciation for the fan hack community after this month, and I'm glad I got to experience so many creations that stem from the love of a series, or maybe a drive to make that thing better. It's not something that everyone can see to the end, but there isn't really anything wrong with that. But to the ones that did, here's looking at you, kid. Do what you love and make what you want. And if that love ever fades and you want to leave, you don't owe us anything. Anyway, I'm sorry if I didn't cover a hack you wanted to see this month or go more in depth about ones that I did, but that's just how the dice rolls. I picked hacks that were recommended to me or that I just felt looked cool and prioritized based on personal interest and time. But we're not done yet. Oh no, we've still got one more video this month, and it's gonna be something a bit different. We're going on one more random fan adventure. Mine.
Ready, guys?
Let's do this. Leroy!